Ahoy there, Captain Benzie here, coming at you with another ship fitting guide for Eve Echoes. Today we are continuing our little mini-series on the Tech 7 Assault frigates by examining the Gallente Federation Incursus Assault. This is a cool little frigate that is kind of a cross between the Punisher and the Merlin, so having covered those two, this seemed like the logical third one to go on to before we look at the Breacher Assault as the final one. Now, if you do enjoy this video, let me know by hitting like on it, sub to the channel for all things Eve Echoes, ding that notification bell so that you know when the next video goes live, and make sure to let me know what topics you want to see me cover in future videos by commenting down below. If there's a particular ship you'd like to see me cover in a ship fitting guide, do let me know as well, but be aware it does obviously take time to source, to fit, and to trial that ship ready for a video, so please have a little bit of patience with me on those. Finally, if you do want to go the extra mile and help support this channel, you can do so by joining us on Patreon. Details are on screen now. That said and done then, let's talk about the Incursus Assault. This ship is of course found on the Gallente Federation ship tree, and like the other assault frigates, you need to climb up the frigate branch to tech level 7, and there it is, the Incursus Assault. Now, looking at this ship, it is fairly reminiscent of the Enyo from EVE Online. In fact, if you look at the wings here, you can see the little R on this side, there's another little R on that side there, and on the underside here at the back, you can see there is another little R. These are the symbols of Roden Shipyards, who are the people who build the Enyo in EVE Online. Therefore, I believe that's where the inspiration for the Incursus Assault lies, and certainly when it came to fitting this thing, that's where I started. Looking at the attributes and fittings, the Incursus Assault, like all of the other assault frigates and the faction frigates, has 3 high slots, 3 mid slots, 3 low slots, and then 3 power grid rigs and 3 mechanical rigs. Its defense is fairly tanky at 2,949. That makes it the second tankiest of the assault frigates, just behind the Punisher Assault. Unlike the Punisher, it's got a little bit less armor, but it does have more shield. It's still definitely an armor tank ship, as we'll come to in a moment, but it does have a little bit more shield than the Punisher does, giving it just that little bit of buffer before you start taking damage onto the armor. If we scroll down a little bit further, you'll see that it's got a signature radius of 33.5 meters, which actually makes it slightly smaller than the Atron 2, but with a flight velocity of 353, down from the Atron's 426, and of course the Atron gets afterburner bonuses too. Ultimately, you can see this is not necessarily a speed tank. It's got the size for a speed tank, but it doesn't have the velocity or the afterburner bonuses to really make that worthwhile. But again, we'll come to that later in the combat demonstration. Its warp speed of 5.5 is, like the other assault frigates, better than standard frigates and very useful for getting around the map if you're going encounter running or just moving from A to B. It's a very fast little frigate for doing so. Looking at its trait descriptions, of course it has that same roll bonus as the other assault frigates, 5 seconds damage control activation time increase, and it gets the same bonus from advanced micro warp drive operation of a 10% reduction to warp drive signature radius penalty per level and a 5% reduction to warp drive capacitor need per level. That's obviously 50% reduction to the warp drive signature radius and a 25% reduction to the capacitor need for the micro warp drive as well. Now, it does only say warp drive here, but I have tested it. It is the micro warp drive it is referring to, just written slightly confusingly. Now, like the other assault frigates as well, Advanced Frigate Command boosts the weapon system and the tank. In this case, small railgun damage, small railgun optimal range, and armor repairer efficiency. That, of course, as you would expect, means we are going to be fitting railguns to this ship, and we are going to be using an armor repairer, because this is clearly an armor tank, and if it's getting bonuses to it, we may as well try and use it. Well, sort of. But anyway, that brings us nicely across to the fitting section of the video. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty details of how to fit this Enyo wannabe, first of all, a big shout out and thank you to Toby, my resident frigate ship builder, for building not 1 but 2 of these things at short notice for me after the first one got blown up in a PvP engagement out in Black Rise. On Sunday night, I basically spent about an hour and a half harassing miners and other ships. I got about 11 kill mails in the Incursus Assault before eventually one guy said enough's enough and took me out with a Caracal Navy issue, a Rupture, and a Corax Assault all in one go. The Caracal Navy issue on its own, I'd got it down to hull before finally getting a little bit, before having the Corax Assault jump in and pin me. Micro warp drive to range and pulled away. I escaped with about 5% hull. I continued harassing them for about another half an hour, and eventually all 3 of those ships jumped me and took me out. Big big oof moment. Wish I'd had it on recording, but it was a great little moment. Quite proud that it took 3 massive ships to pin me down and kill me in this thing, but there we go. Anyway, so like with the Merlin and the Punisher videos that I've done so far, you can fit this Enyo wannabe with an up-close and personal Enyo face build. Oh my goodness, that's terrible. That's an absolutely terrible joke. But yes, you can do an up-close and personal with snub-nosed railguns, and ultimately with the Merlin and the Punisher, you can do this kind of fit that I'm going to showcase now as well, but I wanted to showcase it here on the Incursus as I've had a bit more fun and a bit more luck with the Incursus in doing this than with the others. This is a web kiting build. The idea here is that we are going to orbit our prey at a distance greater than a Stasis web of fire. That means we can maintain our full flight velocity and not have to worry about being slowed down by webs. You kind of speed tank with a micro warp drive, and it's great fun, although it is slightly lower DPS than obviously going for that up close and personal build. Anyway, in order to do this, of course, we've gone for Quaif small rifled railguns. Obviously, the Incursus Assault has a bonus here to small railgun optimal range, which is what makes this so useful here on the Incursus. That pushes the optimal range of these small rifled railguns up to 13.37 kilometers. Obviously, most Stasis Weberfires have a range of about 11 to 13 kilometers, so if I'm orbiting at 14 kilometers, these guns are still doing excellent damage, but I'm outside of web range. I should still be in warp disruptor range, because obviously those have a range of about 26 kilometers, so I can hold the target in place, orbit round at an extreme velocity with the micro warp drive, and hopefully avoid all incoming damage. Obviously, whichever small rifled railguns you have handy are best, but Quaif small rifled railguns aren't that expensive on the market at the moment. They're about $1 million a piece, so 3 million does give you a full fit here. Again though, if you did watch the Merlin Assault and the Punisher Assault video, and you like that up close and personal playstyle, that does still work. It's a little bit riskier, just swap these top three for blasters, for snub-nosed railguns, and it will still work. But anyway, continuing the theme here of this web kiting build, obviously we need something to keep us going at speed. With the Incursus Assault getting bonuses to micro warp drives, that's exactly what we've gone for here, a Scout small micro warp drive. Obviously, when you're speed tanking with a micro warp drive, I mentioned in my propulsion video that you don't want to speed tank with a micro warp drive simply because the flight velocity adjustment and the signature radius adjustment, you need the signature radius adjustment to be significantly lower than the flight velocity adjustment. That's because obviously if they're both the same, you're going to be getting no net benefit in regards to speed tanking. And if you're up close, you're never getting that full flight velocity adjustment because your inertia to maintain that tight orbit slows you down. Because we're going to be further out, we're going to be sitting at about the 14 kilometer mark, we can actually maintain that full 528% increase to the flight velocity. On the flip side of that, the signature radius adjustment then is only 262%, so there is a net gain in doing so. We're harder to hit, we're maintaining that range, and we're outside of web range as well. Excellent, excellent way to avoid incoming damage, as we'll showcase later. Now, again, you saw that obviously the Incursus Assault gets a bonus to armor repairer efficiency, so a Knight small armor repairer, of course, makes up the other low slot that I've gone for here, repairing any incidental damage to the armor. Now, you'll notice that the third slot is probably a little bit confusing compared to the other assault ships. The other assault ships, of course, I've put a damage control unit in there. After all, you get the additional 5 seconds activation. This time around, though, I've gone for a Mark V adaptive armor hardener. Obviously, the better one of these you have, the better. Just trying to get them, like, you know, one of the faction level ones or the officer level ones is ridiculously expensive at the moment, and the gain is not quite worth the full price increase for me at this point in time. I'm hoping those will come down in cost a little bit. Anyway, so what this does is ultimately increases my armor damage resistances across the board by 16.37% when it's active. Now, obviously, a damage control unit does that as well, but even an all-round damage control only does about 8.5% increase, whereas here, this does a 16.37% increase across the board. Yes, okay, you can activate a damage control unit, and for the next 18 seconds, you take almost no damage because those resistances have been boosted by about 800%, but that only lasts for 18 seconds, and whilst 18 seconds is a long time, there's then a 150-second cooldown. Excellent for PvP, but not so good for PvE. If you're going for a PvP fit, then ultimately, yes, swap the adaptive armor hardener for a damage control unit. You will get a better result in a one-on-one fight. But for PvE, which we're going to be showcasing in a moment, the Mark V adaptive armor hardener does work out a lot better. Now for the mid slots then, I've gone for a small energy Nosferatu, in this case an Imperial Navy one. If I unfit that briefly, you'll see that I am not cap stable in this normally. It's 2 minutes 4 seconds if everything is switched on. Fortunately, I should never really have everything switched on. Ultimately, if I fit an Imperial Navy small Nosferatu here, you'll see this does then tell me I'm capacitor stable. It's kind of lying to me, it's not being completely honest with me. That I will be capacitor stable as long as I'm in Nosferatu range and the Nosferatu is running at decent enough efficiency. Obviously, I'm going to be orbiting at 13 to 14 kilometers, and an energy Nosferatu has an optimal range of 4 with an accuracy fall off of 2, meaning it's only useful up to 8 kilometers. I'm going to be beyond that 8 kilometers, so why a small energy Nosferatu? Well, ultimately, if you go for the brawling build, if you go for the one using snub-nosed, then you're going to want two of those Nosferatus in there to make sure that you can keep everything running at all times. That said, for the web kiting build here, even though I'm going to be orbiting at 13-14 kilometers, if I do need to really save my my capacitor, I can zoom in with that micro warp drive right up close and personal, right into their face, Enyo face, and activate that Nosferatu, turn off the micro warp drive and just drain them for everything they have until I'm topped up, and then zoom out to range again. Obviously, that only works on certain ships. Don't try that on a Caracal Navy issue armed with rapid missile launchers. That will get you destroyed. For PvP as well, you are going to then fit these final 2 slots here with warp disruptors. Warp disruptors, of course, have a range of about 25 kilometers. That means if you're orbiting at the 13 to 14 kilometer mark, you're going to be outside their web range, but they are still inside your warp disruptor range. Yes, the DPS is a little bit lower here, but you're not going to be killed. They are, and if they can't run, well, it's just a matter of time. Ultimately, go for 2 of those. If you can get the faction level 1s, that gives you a point of 4, which is just going to lock anything down. But anyway, for now, I'm going to be showcasing this one in PvP, PvE, so I haven't fitted those because there's not much point. Now, looking here in the rigs then, in the rigs I've gone for a railgun collision accelerator and 2 railgun burst aerators. Now, as I said before, normally when I'm trying to work out whether I should be fitting for the activation time, 2 activation time and 1 straight damage, or whether it should be 2 straight damage and 1 activation time, ultimately that is based on the ship's bonuses. If a ship has bonuses to straight damage, then go for 2 of the activation time adjustments and 1 damage. If the ship has bonuses to activation time, go for 2 of the damage and only 1 of the activation time. Lean into whichever one is not present on the ship, and it will usually net a better DPS result. So that's what I've gone for here. In the mechanical rigs, a polycarbon engine housing gives me inertia modifier adjustment just to help me maintain orbits, especially when I'm up close and personal, doing the energy drain aspect of this. Eventually the other 2 slots will be filled. I would go for the auxiliary thrusters to give you that extra flight modifier. Always useful, additional flight velocity on a frigate that is going to be moving at some pace. And the third one is going to either be a capacitor control or the energy cell, whichever one it is that you want to go for. Either make your capacitor bigger or make it recharge faster. Either one works, but with that kind of not entirely stable capacitor, you do want to rig into that to help it out as best as possible. Now, I am currently warping into the Escaped Prisoner Advanced encounter. You can see this is a 3.5 million tech level 7 one, so we're going to see how well this ship actually holds up in a tech level 7 storyline encounter. Wish me luck. Hopefully I'm not going to get this blown up on camera. Anyway, here we are in the anomaly. I've warped in at 30 kilometers range. That gives me time to lock on, and we're going to pick the small targets first. Obviously, that breacher is going to be our first one. I should have already set my orbit for 14 kilometers, but I'm just going to make sure that I have. We're going to activate the micro warp drive, and I don't need to worry about anything else yet in regards to those low slots, the armor hardener or the armor repairer, because obviously I'm not taking anything to my armor. Once we're in range, I will start to activate, here we go now, with the railguns. That should start doing some damage to that Gisty Breacher. There we go. Obviously, damage isn't overly high, and if you are absolutely crazy, you could swap the armor hardener for extra damage if you wanted to with something like a magnetic field stabilizer. I really don't recommend it. Just fit better rigs, ultimately. Obviously, I've only got the tier 1 rigs right now, so you do want to be going a little bit up to tier 2 if this is a ship you're going to be using a lot. I'm going to go into the 14 kilometer there because it's orbiting me at 16 kilometers and that is negatively affecting my damage. If I turn the micro warp drive off, that should help me fix my orbit just briefly, and we'll start to take out that breacher. You see though, I'm still not taking much in the way of damage. Oh, my battery life is horrific. How do I keep doing that in videos? There we go. We're now through the shields and we're taking out the armor. That's much better now. Now that we're in there, which ship are we going to be going for next? It is going to be the Talwar. There we are. So let's set up an orbit on that one. And we'll see. I don't think at this point... Yep, we're going to activate the micro warp drive. We're going to get ready to activate those armor tanking modules. There we are, we're dealing the damage through. Still not taking enough. Yeah, it definitely works out better to have the micro warp drive on. That just proves there that 100% the speed bonus that I'm getting from the micro warp drive does outweigh the signature radius penalty. And let's not lie, the signature radius penalty on this is fairly substantial. If I go into targeting on the fitting menu while doing this, you'll see this ship now has a signature radius of 121 meters. Pick your favorite cruiser and check what its signature radius is and see how that compares, and I'm sure you will be astonished at how big the signature radius of this particular ship is once it's actually out in combat here. Oh look, it's a Talwar Assault. Nice to see we're going assault ship versus assault ship. And ultimately at this point in time, you see I'm not taking much in the way of damage at all. A little bit of incidental damage on the shields here and there. I haven't even had to switch the armor hardener on yet, let alone the armor repairer. Obviously that will change soon. We've taken out one ship, we're working our way through the Talwar. Obviously these things do actually have fairly decent armor, but there we go, nice whack there. Into the hull. Yay, slowly pulling that one apart. And which ship should we go for next? I think we're going to go for that Scythe because it's not too far away and I know it's not quite as tanky as the others, so it is going to be taking off one of those 4 ships worth of guns a lot faster than the others. Obviously going from 4 guns down to 3 guns faster is going to be better. So I think that's what we're going to go for next. Orbit onto that. Obviously, I do expect to take some incidental damage here, as my angular velocity is going to lose. Simply, I'm going in a straight line towards that Gistum Scythe at the moment. That means it's much easier to hit me with turrets if that's what it's using. But we're now in the orbit. There we are, the damage is coming through. We slowly start peeling away the armor of that Gistum Scythe. And you'll notice I haven't even seen, if I go into ships here, haven't even, oh, no, wrong one, sorry, into PvE, you'll see that none of these have even applied webs to me at this point in time. They can't, I'm out of web range, and in PvP, that is an incredibly useful piece of information. There is no way to web at this range, and I would have warp disruptors on, stopping them from getting away. That makes these assault ships absolutely terrifying in PvP if you set them up for that web kite build. You can do this, as I said, with the Merlin and with the Punisher. The Merlin does it slightly better because of the length of the railguns. The Punisher does struggle a little bit because of beam lasers not being quite as rangy. It doesn't have the range modifiers to it that the Merlin and the Incursus here do, but it can be done. The Breacher Assault can also do it, obviously, with missiles, because missiles, that's what they do, and that video is coming soon, I promise. That's just proving to be quite a tricky ship to take care of. But as you can see, I'm not going to go through this entire anomaly. I think I'm kind of proving the point here by the fact that I haven't even had to turn on the armor repairer or the armor hardener at this point in time. Which means for a mission like this, yeah, you probably could get away with actually taking those off completely and fitting the things like the magnetic field stabilizers just for straight up extra damage to make this go a little bit faster. To me, I think that's kind of the key takeaway from this. These are excellent little ships, and if you go for a kiting build like this, this sort of web kiting build, then the fact that you don't do much damage doesn't really matter because you're not taking any either. And I'm just one by one slowly pulling these down to the point that my shields are now repairing on an armor tank ship. That's kind of embarrassing, but there we go. Anyway, folks, I think that really does prove everything I wanted to say here about the Incursus Assault. I'm still loving these assault frigates, whether you go for that Anyo face build of using the blasters, snub-nosed railguns, whether you go for that up-close and personal snub-nosed railguns, punch them in the face build, or whether you go for the kiting build like this. They're great fun little ships, and they can just do so much there. And again, just notice, no webs. No webs at all, and in PvP that makes this terrifying to a cruiser or above, because you're moving too fast for them to hit you with tracking, and they can't slow you down with their webs. They're sitting there going, why aren't my webs in range? And you're just going, because I'm better than you, because I'm a frigate pilot. Before we do go away on this one though, just to answer a quick question, because someone asked me in the comment section the other day, what do I do for making money? Because my friends are telling me that, you know, they're doing all of these anomalies and that in cruisers, and they're saying I don't do enough damage in a frigate to warrant bringing along. It's not fair that I get part of the loot when they're the ones pulling their weight. Probably not, actually. You'd be surprised. Frigates and destroyers are often the ones doing most of the damage, especially once you're taking on things. If they're going to be in battle cruisers soon, and if they're in battle cruisers, they're going to really struggle against swarms of frigates and destroyers. Like genuinely, really struggle. It can be astonishing, actually, how dangerous anomalies can be if you aren't fit completely for it. That means ultimately having a friend who is in an assault frigate, or in any kind of frigate in fairness, that can take out those smaller ships is going to be massively beneficial to them, and it's important that they recognise that. When we do dead space anomalies in the Catskill Cartel, we usually have 1 or 2 people in frigates who are speed tanking and taking the aggro, and just not getting hit and moving at distance, and heck, if they get destroyed, heck, it was only a Condor 2, who cares? Whilst the other ships, all the cruisers and that, are avoiding damage because the pirates are attacking the speed tank and missing all the time. That means they're able to actually then apply their damage better and do that anomaly a little bit more risk-free. It's very, very useful having frigates around. For me personally, I make a lot of money either by running encounters like this. 4.5 million for this encounter is nothing to sneeze at, and then of course, once you get to the end of those, the storyline missions, you get the big ones that are like 25 million. You can either do those yourself or you can sell them on the market. Quite lucrative income there. That's a great way of making money, obviously selling the loot that you get there as well. And finally, don't underestimate the power of PvP. If you've got a good ship that can take out things like Caracals, find yourself some Caracals, Caracal trainers and Caracal navy issues, and if you can take one out, often it has very expensive fittings that can be put on the market. I took out a Caracal navy issue the other day that I genuinely swear must have been AFK. Admittedly, I was in my succubus. He must have been AFK, like semi-AFK, doing an anomaly, not realised I was there. I took him all the way down to about halfway through armour before he even locked onto me, and he had a full complement of Dead Space level, what they called the medium rapid launchers. And if you look at the market at how much medium rapid missile launchers sell for, you can see how much bank I made off that. Same with the Gisty C medium shield booster that I rescued from that. Great way to make money. Anyway, folks, I am now rambling on about great ways to make money in frigates. I will showcase that kind of stuff more in a future video. Hopefully by now you've seen that I can sit here rambling. I'm not even really staring at the screen because I'm semi-AFK in this one. I'm just slowly going around that cyclone, ripping it apart piece by piece because it can't hit me. And you can see there, oh look, I'm pretty much at full shields. That's terrifying. Anyway, folks, let me know how you're getting on with assault frigates. Hit me up on Twitter, especially. Find me at CPT Benzie, or use the hashtag CSKL when you share screenshots. Obviously, if you go down here at the bottom, you can save a screenshot like that. That's a terrible one. Send it to Twitter. Put hashtag CSKL there. I do love seeing your screenshots. Let me know how you're getting on with your frigates or whichever ships it is that you're using, what your favourite Tech 7 ship is, how you're getting on with it all. Happy sailing, and see you in New Eden.